The restaurant had gone silent. The clinking of glasses stopped, the murmurs of laughter faded, and all eyes turned to the man standing in the middle of the room. His face was pale, eyes red, his hand trembling against his chest. He was a man everyone in that city admired, a billionaire known for his power, his control, his arrogance. But at that moment, he looked small, broken, and terrified. His voice cracked as he whispered to the young waitress standing before him, "Hug me," in front of them. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Thread. Your support helps us spread more stories that touch hearts around the world. The story began months earlier, far from the glittering dining halls and expensive suits. Ethan Moreau was a name that carried weight in every corporate building in the city. At only 40, he had built a business empire that stretched across continents, hotels, fashion, tech, you name it. But behind the polished smile and luxury cars was a man driven by something dark, guilt. Years ago, in his ruthless climb to success, Ethan had destroyed lives without blinking. He fired employees to cut costs, crushed competitors with unfair tactics, and humiliated people who stood in his way. To him, emotions were weaknesses, and kindness was a luxury the poor used to justify failure. But everything changed the night his world fell apart. His wife, Lila, the only person who saw the broken boy behind his pride, died in a car accident while on her way to surprise him on his birthday. Ethan never forgave himself. He spent years burying the pain under work, pretending her loss was just another transaction, until the loneliness began eating him alive. He started seeing her face in the mirror, hearing her voice in his empty mansion. He could not sleep, he could not smile, and no amount of money could buy him peace. One evening, desperate to escape his own thoughts, Ethan walked into a small, cozy restaurant near the outskirts of the city, a place far from his usual world of champagne and contracts. He wanted quiet, just one meal in peace. That's where he met her, a young waitress named Maria. She had kind eyes, a soft smile, and spoke gently, with the kind of patience that reminded him of Lila. She didn't know who he was, and for the first time in years, Ethan didn't want anyone to. When she noticed his untouched food, she approached quietly and said, "Bad day." Ethan, startled by the sincerity in her voice, nodded. Something about her tone cracked the wall he had built around his heart. Over the next few weeks, he began visiting the restaurant more often. Maria would serve him, never asking personal questions, never judging. She just listened when he spoke, and sometimes, she said things that made him think about life in ways he hadn't in decades. She once told him, "Kindness doesn't make us weak. It reminds us we're still human." Those words stayed with him. Ethan started doing small acts of kindness, paying for someone's meal, donating anonymously, visiting an orphanage Lila once loved. Slowly, he began to change, though the guilt still sat heavy inside him. He wanted to make things right, to prove that even a man like him could still have a heart. But fate had a way of testing him. One afternoon, a large corporate dinner was scheduled at the very restaurant Ethan had come to cherish for its simplicity. He had recently bought the entire restaurant chain, a business move, he told himself, but deep down, it was because of Maria's presence. That night, he came dressed sharply, surrounded by his investors, lawyers, and associates, people who only respected him for his power. They laughed loudly, boasting about profits and deals, mocking those who couldn't keep up with the game. Maria was working that night, unaware that her kind customer, Ethan, was the same man who owned the company now sitting at her table. As she served drinks, one of the investors rudely snapped his fingers and made a cruel comment about her being just a waitress. The others laughed. Ethan froze. Something twisted inside him. He had once been that kind of man, arrogant, cold, blind to people's feelings. But now, watching Maria's quiet humiliation, shame burned through him. He stood up suddenly. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. His closest partner whispered, "Ethan, what are you doing?" But Ethan didn't hear him. His eyes were on Maria, who stood there, trembling slightly, trying to hide her hurt behind a forced smile. For a moment, he felt the weight of every cruel thing he had ever done pressing down on his chest. The faces of all the people he had crushed flashed before him. The restaurant seemed to blur. His heart pounded, and his voice, usually deep and commanding, broke as he spoke. "Hug me," he whispered hoarsely, tears stinging his eyes. "Hug me in front of them. Maria froze, confused. Ethan's expression said it all: pain, regret, fear. Fear of being seen as weak, of breaking the image he had built all his life. But he didn't care anymore. He needed this moment, not for the crowd, but for himself. Slowly, hesitantly, Maria stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. The room went completely silent. The man everyone saw as unshakable was crying, truly crying, in the arms of a waitress. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something pure: forgiveness. The tears he had hidden behind business meetings and contracts finally fell. The people watching didn't know what to say. Some looked away in discomfort, others in disbelief. But Maria held him without judgment, her hand steady on his back, whispering softly, "It's okay, it's okay." After that night, Ethan disappeared from the public eye for a while. Rumors spread that he had retired or fallen ill. But the truth was simpler. He had chosen to change his life completely. He sold part of his empire and started a foundation in his late wife's name, one that supported struggling workers and funded education for children who couldn't afford it. Maria continued working at the restaurant, and one day, Ethan came back, not as a customer, but as a volunteer helping serve food to the poor. When she saw him, she smiled and said, "You really did it." Ethan replied quietly, "No, you did. You reminded me I could." From that day on, the once feared millionaire became known for something else: compassion. He never forgot that moment in the restaurant when he had finally allowed himself to be human. Because sometimes, the greatest act of strength isn't power or pride, it's the courage to admit you need love, forgiveness, and a second chance. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Thread, where we share true and emotional stories that remind us what it means to be human. And before you go, speech balloon comment below. What would you have done if you were Maria in that moment? Would you have hugged him? Because sometimes, a single act of compassion can change a life forever.